it was challenging at first, but the benefits are tremendous. And once you integrate it into your lifestyle, it's something that you really can't live without. My name is Eddie Rodriguez, and I started metabolic therapies for myself. Really, the gateway to that was my experience with my father. In my family, we have a strong family history of early onset Alzheimer's. And my father was diagnosed and disabled at the age of 53 by early onset Alzheimer's. That was back in 2018. He was the primary income provider, health insurance provider for my mother and my young brother, who at the time was 15 years old. So it was a really challenging diagnosis and experience at that time because we all had to scramble and figure out how we would support him and how we would move forward in really the best way possible. With his diagnosis came a poor prognosis. Late onset Alzheimer's, not to diminish it, um, the the progression is a little bit longer. It's actually a lot longer of a period from diagnosis to resulting debilitating decline and death. Early onset Alzheimer's typically works or moves faster, and then on top of that, we do have ApoE4 genes in our family, but uh, what we had was a rare genetic form, or what they call a genetic form. It's called familial early onset Alzheimer's. It's less than 1% of all Alzheimer's cases, which then moves even faster in terms of progression for early onset Alzheimer's. So, we had to get our affairs in order. And the original prognosis was like, there's nothing you can do about this. Get your affairs in order, and there's a saying in neurology I've come to find out is diagnose and adios. And we respected and appreciated that prognosis, but we got to work on seeking out other answers to see if there were things that could work. And that's how we found metabolic therapies. Thankfully, we were able to find the work of Dr. Dale Bredesen and the Bredesen protocol, which is really a collection of metabolic therapies that are within our control and influence to help improve our metabolic health, help improve our metabolic fitness, our neuronal, our cognitive function. And we grabbed onto that because, I mean, what's the alternative? So that helped my dad tremendously. But before that, you know, um, I had to get his buy-in to do this. This is a really tough diagnosis to get. Um, you know, the he had been struggling with depression a couple of years before he got diagnosed because he was having trouble at work. He was kind of hiding symptoms. He knew something was wrong. His sister had just passed away at the age of 57 from the same diagnosis the year prior. And we had the long family history. So I had to get his buy-in to do something because there's a high incidence of suicide with familial early onset Alzheimer's. In fact, if you have the gene, all standard of care really offers you is counseling because that's the service that they feel helps you best cope with what they perceive to be your inevitable destiny. But to get his buy-in, I said, we're gonna try some things, and there's no guarantee, but I will do them with you. It wasn't something where we would just quarterback it and he would figure out how to do this himself. We'd help him manage it, but I would be doing it alongside him. And then, my mother and my brother jumped on board. Even my wife has jumped on board as we've caregived for him and managed that. And a big piece of that was the diet. And metabolic therapies like the managing stress effectively, optimizing your sleep, exercise super important. But what we put in our mouths every day, multiple times a day, so important. So I had to learn all this new information and unfortunately unlearn a bunch of other stuff that we just get conditioned to, the standard American diet or whatever it may be. The first interventions we started with were diet, ketogenic, which was something, there was a study back in 2014 that Dr. Bredesen put out. He had 10 patients with mild cognitive impairment and diagnosed Alzheimer's disease that reversed their cognitive decline. And it was like, there was nothing else out there like that. I couldn't believe it wasn't getting the airtime. And then more studies have come out. But we went ahead and we just looked up the study. We started doing it. We bought The End of Alzheimer's, the book. We started working through that. We joined Apollo Health, his company, to start the protocol officially. And it's one of those things where I was in my 20s at the time. I don't have any diagnoses of anything, but I'm not watching what I eat. I'm not watching what I do, and I'm feeling invincible. This diagnosis comes. It's definitely a reality check for mortality. Then I find out I have the gene as well. I start the diet, and within a week or two, it's like the lights turn on. It's like high definition now. And they say sometimes it's like when you have a tack in your foot and you don't really sense the tack until it gets removed, and you're like, wow, I was tolerating all this irritation and pain and just a lower level of function. And that's what I experienced at first with ketogenic diet, is that now producing ketones, not just relying on glucose or sugar burning. It's like my brain turned on, and my dad felt the same way. And it was cool because we could reinforce and strengthen each other throughout the process. Overall, I probably lost 30 pounds over several years, but I lost the first 20 pounds in like the first year. I didn't think I needed to lose weight. Didn't think I needed to change my diet at the time. But again, uh, it, you try something like this and you see the kind of difference. Um, it definitely helped my emotional resiliency. This was a really tough time at the beginning because there were so many things that we needed to figure out, and it was depressing at first because you get a poor prognosis, and even everybody around us is just telling you got to pack it in, do the best that you can. Um, but these metabolic therapies help me tap into more of an emotional resiliency, emotional stability that you can't really access if you're having the blood sugar ups and downs that come with only carb burning. And that was really helpful. So it helped me be in a better mind frame, a better emotional state to reframe things in an empowering way, and take charge. And for us to all collaborate together to support my dad, but to also determine ourselves to transform all of our health, and lifestyle trajectories. First year and a half, my father did tremendous. I mean, he defied the prognosis of the neurologist. He increased his cognitive scores, the MOCA cognitive test there by almost 40%, which was amazing. Then the pandemic started, and that kind of derailed some things. But whatever setback we ever had, my father has defied the prognoses given to him primarily due to these metabolic therapies. And I thank God that we've had him in our tool set because he would never be able to recover, or get back on the protocol for us to, live to fight another day without these. And when you learn about it, it makes so much sense. We can't. How can we access cognitive function? How can we access healing if we don't have proper metabolic health at a cellular level, at a neuronal level? So yeah, I'm 35 years old now. Just my birthday today, and due to these genes, um, statistically speaking, I should be on track to become disabled with enough cognitive decline between the ages of 48 and 53, where I would have to start depending on my wife and my kids. Um, and I should actually be showing cognitive impairment at this time. The cognitive impairment and symptoms will typically start showing mid to late 30s, will progress into the 40s, and really, really skyrocket in late 40s, early 50s. What I can say is, additional to my dad's improvements and his defying his prognoses, and he's still punching away. I'm grateful that I don't have any cognitive decline of myself, and we now have a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a newborn, and that in itself is a challenge in being able to have to manage everything: full-time work, the kids, the wife. We have a 3-generational home now because my parents, live with us, and my dad's close here, so we can all do the protocol and we can do these metabolic therapies together and reinforce each other. But it takes a lot of energy and a special level of discipline to make all the trains run on time every day. And thanks to these metabolic therapies, I can keep up. I can tell you, like many of us, I've gotten off the wagon. It's not worth it because you can't keep up. Within a couple of days, you can't operate at that level that you need to be the best, dad, caregiver, brother, whatever you need to be, however you need to show up. You just can't be the best you can be if you're not working on those metabolic therapies and working on your metabolic health. For us, we got pushed into a corner, and it's like, well, things are either going to get bad really fast, or we try something, and no matter how seemingly painful it may be, this gives us the best shot um, to have a better outcome. So we got pushed into it and we took it on. But yeah, it was challenging at first, but the benefits are tremendous. And once you integrate it into your lifestyle, it's it's something that you really can't live without. A lot of people had asked me what we were doing, checking into my dad, and other people in our community had come down with Alzheimer's diagnoses and even early onset Alzheimer's diagnosis, especially during the pandemic, because COVID was kind of an X factor there and causing some issues for a lot of people's health and comorbidities. And just trying to share what we had learned and what we were doing. People had asked me to start just put this information out there where it was available to people. I started a YouTube channel to start documenting what we were learning, our journey. And that's really something that it's an added workload on top of what we're doing every day and what I have to do. But the way I look at it is nothing is guaranteed. But I do have a strong belief that what we're doing is giving us the highest probability to buck the trend, change our family tree. That's our biggest determination, is that with my father, the generations of my father, myself, my brother, my kids, we change our family tree. What we've experienced in our past, our biography is not going to be our destiny. It's not going to be our future. And part of the channel is being able to document that, help others with what we're experiencing and learning. But pragmatically as well, if for us, having a genetic form that's what they call deterministic, um, if it doesn't work, well, we'll have plenty of information on there that, you know, my kids or other family members or someone else can pick up the torch to keep figuring it out with. When it comes to the genes piece, we've heard genes load the gun, environment pulls the trigger. What we do, what we eat, what we breathe in, what we drink, stress, who we surround ourselves with, all these things, sleep. Um, when it comes to this familial early onset Alzheimer's gene, most neurologists, if not all of them, will tell you it's deterministic. They say no matter what you do, you're just going to get it. Um, but what I believe is, if you asked most neurologists 15 years ago about ApoE4, they tell you the same thing. And we've learned a lot about ApoE4. And there's plenty of ApoE4s that are running around, have no cognitive decline, have no Alzheimer's. And it's because of what they're doing, whether intentionally or unintentionally, with these metabolic therapies and increasing and improving and maintaining metabolic health. So that's really important. In fact, there's a community, apoe4.info, which I'm a part of, and it's thousands of ApoE4s all around the world doing this. I believe that this gene is a gene whose properties are not fully understood yet, just like ApoE4 was 15 years ago. Even there was a paper just within the last year that a certain medical association had tried to still reinforce the notion that if you had two copies of ApoE4 that you would get Alzheimer's no matter what, and it's just not the case. And I think we would all be better for studying those anomalies and what they're doing, because there seems to be some common denominators, and it comes down to what they're doing metabolically with these metabolic therapies. I live and die by these metabolic therapies. My family does. My father does. I'm grateful for people like Dr. Chris Palmer, Dr. Martin Picard, Dr. Matthew Phillips, Dr. Dale Bredesen, Dr. Stephen Cunane, Dr. Mary Newport, people who have really done a lot of great work in studying and researching how these metabolic therapies, especially ketogenic therapies and ketone production, help the brain, help people, help reverse or prevent dementia. And one last quick story that it sticks with me big time is, you know, Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile. This is May 6th, 1954. And I've said this story so many times to people, it's kind of corny, but I really, it's a big part of my belief system. As the story goes, nobody had broken the 4-minute mile. Nobody had run a sub 4-minute mile that had been recorded for over 2,000 years. And the prevailing belief was it's not going to happen. It's not physically possible, not humanly possible. But Roger Bannister did it, but they asked him, how'd you do it? And he said, the first thing I did was I decided to believe that I could do it. He didn't know how yet, but he decided he would believe that he could do it and that he would start working towards doing it. And one of the key things he says, that the most important factor before the training and before the races, the most important factor was his belief and his visualization. He would visualize him crossing that line under 4 minutes. And then he would visualize, he'd work backwards and visualize uh, the race and all the details of the race, and he would practice that. And it was in one of those visualizations that the key insight hit him. Wait a minute. What if I shorten the stride length? What if I run different than other people have attempted to do this? And he starts to shorten his stride length. And his coaches and other peers are saying, no one's done that. That's not going to work. Never seen that. That's wacky. He starts training this way, and he's striking the ground more often. Long story short, he trains that way. He breaks the 4-minute mile. That's great. What's amazing is the following year, 26 other people do it. Okay. And now, as we're speaking, there's a 12-year-old girl in practice running a 4-minute mile, and that's what she does. So what does that mean? There's a huge power in our mindset, and there's a huge power in our beliefs and how that affects what we do and how we use the resources that we do have. We might have different people might have different limitations, but within the constraints that we have, if we can take advantage of whatever resources we do have, it definitely gives us a better probability than if we don't. And these metabolic therapies are just that. These are tools that are within our control and influence, and we can use to get better outcomes. I encourage everybody, work with your practitioner, honor what they say, try it, but do not underestimate the power of metabolic therapies and the power of doing things that are a little bit harder, because it's easier to passively just take something and wait for something to happen to you. But there is a power in the self-actualization and the transformation process of having to learn and train these things, because you are kind of learning and unlearning. You are applying some new things. It's a little bit of a learning curve, but I'm so grateful to have met more and more and more people in this growing community that are knocking down the mile markers of their journey and getting healthier and helping their family get healthier. So the proof is in the pudding, and we all reinforce each other.
Thank you for watching. If you want to see more, check out these recommended videos. Also, if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with our content and help us expand the movement. And if you want to sign up for our newsletter, access our resources, read the latest research, or check out the Think Smart framework, click here to visit our website. See you on the next video.